Hello and welcome to the weekend edition. Maze, thank you for joining us for yet another classic episode of the show. I'm your host, Dr. Kingori, and kama kawaida, November closed on a high. This week, Kenyans were treated to the literal definition of if talk of the devil and he appears was a person.
The president went further and attacked the judiciary and particularly judges who participated in the judgment. Some of them who are at the gallery, you know? Some of them who are at
the... timing. This was immediately after the president's State of the Nation address on Tuesday this week. Duale's reaction in that video has so many interpretations, one of them being, we have leaders who cannot face their problems. Now, I think this would have been more interesting if the president joined him on the interview. Alafu sema, what are we discussing?
The president went further and attacked the judiciary and particularly judges who participated in the judgment. Some of them who are at the gallery, you know? Some of them who are at the...
Now, on the real, Maze, this has to be the best placement ever of this clip.
Some of them who are at the gallery.
If you want to talk to me direct. Don't go through the corners.
Maze, don't go through the corners. Ase ni kama uonge hivyo juu anafikiria president haonangi news. And then it was interesting to hear what the former leader of majority, saying this about the president's speech.
I want to talk to the people who write the president's speech. You should give the president a summary speech. You can't give the president a speech that can fit a whole box. The president cannot start at 3:45 and leave at 6. It has never happened.
Isn't it funny how the concept of time works? The people who gave President Uhuru 10 years now cannot stand him for 2 hours. The president's speech has received mixed reaction, even for some items that sounded like very good vibes that ought to be celebrated. Maze, kama hii.
Today, our GDP stands at Kenya shillings 11 trillion, up from the 4.75 trillion, and from being ranked as the 12th wealthiest nation in Africa when I took over, we have now moved 6 ranks to become the 6th wealthiest nation in the continent on account of the choices that we have made.
Maze, moving 6 positions to be the 6th wealthiest nation in Africa. Wow! Kuna watu wanasema this is thanks to Atuoli and KRG the Don. Na haters on the other end. Haters on the other end wanasema kama sio ringtone na Omosh tungekuwa number 2. Now, in his speech, the president also said that the Kenyan population is projected to grow to over 60 million by 2030. That tells you the kind of productivity expected in this country for the next few years. In fact, the president went ahead and said that 3 out of 5 Kenyans will be in school at that time. So does this mean that the 2 out of 5 Kenyans out of school, according to that statistics, will be the father and the mother? This is a very tricky situation in very many angles. One of them being that in 9 years, Kenyans are going to produce around 20 million people. That's like 10 million new people every 5 years. Wait. When you do the math, continuing with this trajectory, it means that the Kenyan population will be at 407 million by the time Wetangula becomes president. Now, anyways, wacha tuone vile itakuwa. We have a great show lined up for you. This is one of those episodes that we have to split into 2, Maze. Our guest served as the youngest ever captain in the Kenya Army. He was the Aide De Camp of Kenya's founding president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and has gone on to serve in all governments since independence. This is not a story for one episode. Ladies and gentlemen, retired Major Masden Madoka. Kierere yangu itanituma nianze na the curious thing about history yote, joining the army and getting to the level of being an aide de camp at 22. Let's start with what inspired you to join the army?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this show.
Karibu.
I had never thought of going into the army.
Okay.
But it so happened that my father was a clergyman attached to the army. In
Okay.
fact, he was amongst the first 12 Africans to be commissioned together with General Idi Amin, Mohammed, and all that, as the first Africans in the King's African Rifles. So I used to visit him in the barracks. His house was in the barracks. So I used to see the sort of life that people were living. And I think that sort of got me excited. But I was more of an adventurous person. I loved adventure.
Okay.
So I felt at one stage that maybe it is in the army that I will get that adventure.
Okay.
Initially, I had wanted to become a lawyer. And I was inspired by the Perry Mason programs, if some of you have seen them. But anyway, in the end, I joined the King's African Rifles.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And what did you have to do as an army officer to qualify to be the youngest captain back then?
The army commander normally selected an officer who would then be the ADC to the president. When he got into office, there was already an ADC for the governor. So he sort of took over and became ADC for Mzee Kenyatta.
Okay.
But his term as ADC was coming to an end. So they recruited another officer to be the ADC. And that officer served his term. And after that, there was yet another officer who was selected by the army commander to be the ADC. Unfortunately, he did not behave himself.
Okay.
So the president fired him.
Okay.
In fact, he got him out of the army.
Okay.
So at that stage, he told the army commander, the next ADC must be the person I interview and make a decision on whether I want that individual or not. Charles Njonjo knew a lot about me.
Yes.
But I must say what happened, the interesting part of the interview is the last thing, actually, almost the last thing. He said, take that newspaper. And then they chose 3 passages for me to read.
Yes.
So I took those passages, I read them, and Njonjo turned to Mzee and said, Mzee, that is English. Because I think he was impressed by the accent
Okay.
which I've been able to acquire at this multiracial school.
Wow. That is...
So, at the end of it, they picked me. And at that time, I was the youngest. And in fact, the army commander, Brigadier Hardy, they did not want me to get the job
Okay.
because they wanted me to go for further training as an intelligence officer in the army.
Okay.
So for him, I was not, in fact, it's just because they had to send more officers.
It was like the story of David.
Yes, so they sent me. But they did not want to send me. So anyway, at the end of it all, they met and said, this is the man we want.
When you get the job,
Yeah.
most of us assume that the role of the ADC is to stand behind the president and look for people who are misbehaving. People who are thinking of doing something. Is that really? Because when we spoke to you, you told me that the roles are actually very different from the assumptions that we take.
Yes.
Yo, wadau, still more good vibes from Major Masden Madoka, retired, on the second part of this show. Maze, don't go nowhere. Hii story inaendelea. See you guys in a bit. Asante sana. Welcome back to the weekend edition. I'm Dr. Kingori. Show ya leo, like I've said, nasemanga kila time, but this one is special on different levels. Our guest for this episode is a gentleman of many firsts. He's a living legend. Nikisema many firsts, first of all, he was the youngest captain in the Kenyan army. In those days, he has served 4 presidents in very high level, in very high capacities. He was the first. Unajua ukiuliza mtu swali ya Aide De Camp ni nini, watu wanaanza kuguess. Basi Aide De Camp ni ule mse anasimamanga nyuma ya president the whole time. Ule mse mnashangaanga kwa nini hakai chini. His case is very special because he was that at the age of 22. Mazi 22. Me, the biggest thing I did at 22 is I had a baby. But then, yeye alikuwa Aide De Camp at 22. Guess wanani? Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. And his story is yeye alikuwa interviewed by the president himself. Maze, I know we cannot exhaust that wealth of history and good vibes for the time that we've been allocated for this show, but we want to make sure that we get the best of that information. Retired Major Masden Madoka is in the house. Asante sana. You're most welcome. Karibu kwa show yetu sana.
Thank you.
But then, when you get the job, most of us assume that the role of the ADC is to stand behind the president and look for people who are misbehaving, people who are thinking of doing something. Is that really? Because when we spoke to you, you told me that the roles are actually very different from the assumptions that we take.
Yes. People do not understand the role of an ADC. First of all, an ADC is not a bodyguard. His role is not to look after the president in terms of safeguarding him.
Yes.
The police have got their own security team. He has a team which is responsible for the safety of the president.
Okay.
The ADC is basically a personal assistant to the president.
Okay.
That is his role. So when the president wants anything done and so on and so forth, he talks to the ADC. Or if there are things that people want the president to know, they would tell me to be able to communicate with the president and say, Mzee, kuna mambo haya na haya na haya.
Okay.
Right? And those things change.
Makes sense, because
So,
yes, that answers so many things. Even growing up,
yes,
we knew the ADC's job is primarily to
bodyguard.
To bodyguard. Like he was like Van Damme. He was the best. He was the cream de la cream of all the bodyguards.
Security was not really his responsibility.
That's interesting to learn.
He was a personal assistant
Okay.
to the president to be able to bring him up to date on the various programs that were ahead of him and so on.
Okay.
So that was basically his role.
Okay.
And all these others are, of course, you have to be a bit curious to know what's going on.
Yes.
All the time. So you have to work closely with the presidential escort commander
Yes.
to make sure that things are working right.
Yes.
So even when they are doing their overall program, whether it's going to Mombasa, Kisumu, wherever,
Yes.
when they've done it, they'll still come and say, this is what we've done.
Okay.
Do you think there's anything else that maybe we have ignored?
Okay.
And then you give your view on what to think.
I think I personally have gotten very many answers, because I used to wonder how much would someone be paid, because the primary role of an ADC, based on the threat on the president's life, I thought was to absorb bullets. If you saw a bullet coming, you stand in front of the president and take it. I wondered. Yes.
So that is not the ADC's job.
Okay.
In fact, the Tanzanians had a very interesting terminology for ADC.
Yes.
Ni pambo la rais.
Pambo la rais, the president's decoration.
Yeah.
So if something happened near the president, you're also allowed to run.
Run where?
You are allowed. No,
you can't desert your boss. I mean, anything happens, I'll die there with him.
Oh, really? But bodyguard is not my responsibility. It's
No,
not in the job
but
description.
wewe ni personal assistant wake.
Personal assistant even going to heaven?
That I don't know, but I mean, you know, you can't. You'd be the last person to leave him.
Okay.
So the role of ADC has been misunderstood, and I think because it has been misunderstood,
Yes.
so the performance of the ADC has been judged maybe wrongly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So it is important how then you relate to the president
As an individual.
as an individual,
Yes.
and of course to his household and to the first family. First lady, the children, you know, we were talking of Kina Uhuru, the young boys, they would come running into my office.
Yes.
They were excited, you know, wearing these slouch hats with those feathers, you know, they were curious. So they'd come and we developed some sort of a relationship.
And that's very interesting that you say that, because being an Aide De Camp, ADC, the president growing up was around you a lot.
Yeah, yes.
So in your moment that, if you can remember back in those days, if the president, being a child then, if he misbehaved, ukimfata akifanya kitu, maybe analamba sukari. Would you act as a, vile watu wanasemanga mtoto ni wa community. Were you allowed to act then? Like umechuna serikali?
He's suggesting me the tuna Uhuru.
Did you have moments like, because you served the president for many years.
Yeah.
In terms of your relationship with the family,
Yes.
As Africans,
Yes.
Akiwa mtoto, president,
Yeah.
akifanya kitu ya utoto,
Well, that time he wasn't a president. That time he was a mutoto.
you deal with him like a mtoto.
Yes. But the good thing about Uhuru, he
Yes.
was a very disciplined individual.
Ah, okay.
And we got on very well. And my wife here is the one who knows more about Uhuru
Yes.
than me, because she was responsible
Yes, yes, yes.
for Mzee's children, making sure they go to school and so on and so forth.
Yes, 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 yes.
So she was more with them.
We'll try
than
to
me.
get her on the show.
Yes.
Atupigie
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And you got married decades ago, very many years ago. And your story starts from independence, uko 1960s. Your marriage still works. In our world now, the grace period of a marriage is 6 months. What is your secret? Give us your secret, alafu tukuachilie.
As a matter of interest, we are celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this December.
50 years.
50, isn't it? 50 years.
50 years
Yes.
ya kuamka na kuonana na the same person.
Yeah, the same person.
How did you do it?
We did it. Well, I suppose in marriage there are many challenges, and you know, I personally believe if a person says he has had a very peaceful marriage, you know, differences, they are very rare.
Okay.
You are bound to have differences here and there, and it's how you handle such situations. I am the most sober one. I'm the most sober one.
Okay.
But really, we managed. And I think one of the important things also is that the family. Now, for me, I had a very understanding family. My father was exceptional. When I was getting married, and there's Mkikuyu, kuoa Mkikuyu, kwani umekosa wataita wote wazuri nini nini?
Yes.
I told them, mimi naenda kule, roho yangu inanipeleka.
Yes.
Na roho yangu inanipeleka hapa Kiambu, Githunguri.
Yes.
nikapata kidosho changu.
Ukaamua ni hivyo na 50 years.
Yeah. Marriage is not an easy thing to hang on. But I think for me, I have been very fortunate. I am essentially a sober person.
Okay.
Mimi sikuwa mlevi.
Okay.
All my years in the army, I never drank alcohol to whatever extent.
Okay.
So hiyo inasaidia, kwa sababu ulevi, mambo ingine ndio unaleta utukutu mwingi.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So mimi, I remained fairly sober.
Okay.
I have, haven't I? I've made fairly sober.
Okay.
And we've worked together, and I developed good relationships.
Okay.
One of the fellows who also really helped me was Ken Matiba.
Okay.
He's the one who recruited me into the breweries, and we grew sports with him there.
Yes. Sawa. And one of the other reasons I believe we're ignoring, and now that you've already told us that marriage is not an easy journey, is that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you had already been trained in the military, so by the time you saw her, you were ready for marriage.
When I saw her,
You after going through the military training, you were ready to settle now.
no, not after training.
Yes.
No, ilikuwa lazima nionje maisha kidogo to be able to determine
Yes.
how I can manage it.
Okay.
Because you are married, are you not?
Myself. I told you about my generation, but I'm working on it. I'm learning something. I'm learning something from this. I'm learning something from this conversation.
So for me, my father being a clergyman, I mean, he spoke about these rights and things like that.
Yes.
And my father was very solid on these issues
And values.
and values.
Okay.
So I'm sure it was more of his influence
Yes.
that maybe I remained sober, because my dad was not pushy. For example, he never ever told me not to drink alcohol. Hakuniambia hivyo hata kidogo.
Okay.
But he was always very crafty. He would tell me, umesikia, fulani amefutwa kazi. Kwa sababu gani? Ya ulevi.
Reverse psychology.
So he kept on rubbing it on and so on and so forth. But I was, as I say, I think I was basically self-disciplined. I think that's what really has helped me.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's most wise. And in your years of service, did you ever anger the president?
Did
President
I?
amekukasirikia. Did you ever get to?
Fortunately not.
Fortunately
I
not.
don't think there is any occasion when the president was annoyed with me,
Okay.
because he really had no opportunity. Because well, his was more social responsibility and things like that.
Yes.
So, no, the president never annoyed me at all.
Okay.
With Moi and all that. One has to learn how to live
Yes.
with these people. They can be a bore.
Okay. Sawa sawa. Sawa sawa. Thank you, sir. Asante sana for honoring us with your time. I believe there's so much we could talk about, but for the information that we've shared, I believe Kenyans will enjoy every bit of that. And if it's possible, we may need to get, or will try to get, Mrs. Madoka to come on the show to also share some bits of the part of her side of her story, because she also deserves a right of reply for some of the things that have been said, especially pale kwa soberness.